Well, good morning. My name's Pineda, and I'm excited to talk to you guys this morning just a little bit about faith and reason and how those two things relate to each other and how faith is valid only with reason. But first, I want to start out by telling you guys a little story. On the screens here, you see a picture of me and my granddad. This is my papa. I got to go see him last weekend, so this is actually taken last weekend. But my dad was visiting with him a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about all the things that he's been able to do in his life. He's 87, so he's had the opportunity to do a lot of really cool things. And he looked at my dad and he said, "Son, I've never been happy." And my dad was taken back, and he looked at him and he said, "But Dad, what about your family? What about your kids?" He said, "I'm proud of you, but I've never really been happy." And so that really has made me ask the question, what makes a happy life? Where did he go wrong? What did he miss? I think what my granddad was missing was a true sense of flourishing in life. See, flourishing in life is characterized by two things. First of all, it's Jesus' teachings. Jesus taught us how to live well. He taught us virtues, and those virtues lead to long-lasting, true happiness. Second of all, flourishing in life is characterized by living with God. It's this idea that we're constantly in the presence of God, that we're in constant fellowship with Him, that we're always in communion with Him. Emmanuel, the name of God, means God with us. And it's easy to talk about what is the flourishing life in theory, but how do I know that I'm living a flourishing life? How do you know if you're flourishing? Flourishing, the evidence of flourishing in your life is fruit. And we get this from Mark chapter 11, verses 12 to 14, when Jesus is walking down the road and he's hungry. So he sees a fig tree and he walks up to the fig tree, and there's no figs on the tree. And so he looks at the tree and he says, "May no one ever eat from you again." And he curses this tree. Why did Jesus curse a fig tree? He did it because the tree wasn't fulfilling its purpose. It wasn't producing the fruit that it was created to produce. You see, in the same way, each of us have been created to do something specific, to do specific jobs, vocations, and roles that we're supposed to do. And the result of doing those things well is that fruit is produced. Every one of us, as Christians, has the vocation to speak truth into others' lives, to preach the gospel and to teach others about God. And the fruit of speaking truth into other people's lives is that they flourish more. The truth will set you free to live a more abundant life. And that's the fruit of speaking truth. But before we can actually speak truth to people, we have to actually know what the truth is. We have to believe it as truth. And it's my belief that the biggest problem in Christianity today is that Christians don't actually believe Christianity is true. You see, we've all seen this statistic that 75% of Christians walk away from the church when they leave high school. 75%. That's 3/4 of our youth group kids are leaving church when they leave high school. Why is that? Millions of parents are asking themselves, why did my son walk away from the church? Why did my daughter leave? Why did she change when she went to college? And I think the answer that they commonly come up with is, well, my daughter walked away because when she went to college, she started thinking too much and she wasn't believing enough. You see, but that exposes the fact that the parents are buying this lie as well. They're believing in what the atheists want them to believe, which is that faith and reason, thinking and believing are in different spheres, and they're not the same thing. They're not related to each other. You see, this is what our schools tell us as well. Christopher Hitchens once said that faith is the surrender of the mind and the surrender of reason. And this is what our schools want us to believe. That's what our universities tell us, is that faith is one thing and reason is another thing, and they're not related. And actually, they're contradictory. And they want to tell us that faith is okay. It's okay for you to have faith, but only if it's a privately held belief. But it shouldn't actually be taken seriously because it's not true. It's unfounded. It's unreasonable. And so if that's what faith is, then it makes sense why so many people walk away from the faith. It makes sense why 75% of youth are walking away from the church if it's not actually true. And this is the lie that they're being told, and they're buying it. And you and I should walk away from the faith too if that's what true biblical faith is, if it's unfounded and untrue. Why would you base your life on a lie? So the question must be asked, is this what true biblical faith is? I'm going to argue that it's not. See, Jonathan Morrow defines faith as trusting in what you have good reason to believe is true. It's good reason. The Bible never calls us to blind faith. That's not what biblical faith is. Biblical faith is founded in truth. This is backed up in Scripture as well. We see it in Luke. In Luke chapter 1, Luke is writing to Theophilus, and he says that he's writing so that you may have certainty concerning the things that you have been taught. He's writing so that Theophilus can have certainty, so that he can have the reasons, the evidence to back up what he believes. He wants that truth, the evidence, to be the foundation of his faith. And the loss of this definition of faith, I think, is the biggest problem in Christianity today, is that people don't really think that their faith is literally true, is reasonable. They think that it's unreasonable. They're buying this lie that Christopher Hitchens has given us. And that's a tragedy. And I have a dream and a hope for the next generation that they don't fall into this same rut that we do. I have a hope for a generation that knows what they believe. They know how to ask deep questions and how to find answers, how to search for answers. They know how to struggle with doubt. We all have doubt, but they know how to deal with that well. And they know that faith and reason aren't incompatible. They know how to ask questions about the resurrection, the reliability of the Bible, the existence of God. And ultimately, they know how to follow the challenge of Peter from 1 Peter 3:15, where Peter says that every believer must always be prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. We need to know why. We need to be able to give answers. And we would do well, and they will do well, to follow the advice of J.P. Moreland when he said to read, think, ask questions, and keep checking things off your list, and to get real answers to your questions. See, that's essential. And I want to help make this happen. I want to help this vision for the future happen. And I want to do that through education, through teaching, through schools. And I want to follow the example of one of the most famous Christians of the 20th century, and that's Mother Teresa. We've all heard of Mother Teresa. She was a missionary from Macedonia. And in 1948, Mother Teresa moved to Calcutta, India, into the slums of Calcutta, India. And she started a school there. She started a school where she taught kids how to write by writing in the dirt on the ground. And she taught them like basic hygiene practices. But she used that as an opportunity to get to know families, to get to know the kids' families so that she could then deepen those relationships. And she was eventually able to go into homes, to go into homes of the poor and the sick and the needy, and to help them and to care for them and to love them. And today her ministry, even though she's passed on, her ministry remains, and it touches millions of lives every year. The lives of orphans and alcoholics, refugees, the poor, the sick. Millions of people are touched by her courage to humble herself and start a school in 1948. And see, I want to follow that same model. I want to go into education and be able to deepen relationships that way and love people and teach them to have a reasonable biblical faith. And I want to do two things that she did to follow her example to make this future that I see come about. First of all, I want to embody the values. See, Mother Teresa, she didn't just go into the city and teach and then come away. No, she went and she lived in the slums. She wore their clothes. She ate their food, and she became one of them. In the same way, as I teach my students to have a reasonable faith, to ask questions, I want to be doing that my whole life. I want to be a lifetime learner who is always asking the questions of why I believe what I believe. Always studying the reasons for my faith. Second of all, Mother Teresa embodied the values. She used education she engaged and developed others. She started in a school. She used education as her foundation, but that gave her the opportunity to deepen relationships, to get to know the families, and to go into homes. In the same way, I want to start in the classroom by getting to know students, but it doesn't stop in the classroom. That's not the end. I want to use that as a foundation in order to be able to go and to get to know students outside the classroom, to really mentor them and build them up and teach them to have a reasonable faith, because I have a passion for teaching the next generation how to ask deep and difficult questions so that they can have a reasonable faith and they can have confidence that Christianity is true and they can have confidence in their faith. And maybe the Lord will use me to have an impact like Mother Teresa, where millions of people are touched. But maybe not. But the important thing is that I'm fulfilling my vocation that the Lord has called me to, that I'm fulfilling my vocation, and I'm trusting the Lord to produce the fruits of my best efforts. Thank you.